I'm talking with Phil Clampett and Bob DeCook, co-authors of the book Transforming Leaders into Progress Makers. Phil, I know you've spoken to many groups in the past few years. How do people respond when you ask, have you ever thought it's time to move in a new direction, but no one will listen?
Well, almost every hand in the audience goes up, and they can all relate to that issue. I think, for example, I'll oftentimes follow it up with, how come Sears didn't become Amazon.com? Or why don't newspapers be the first people to, organizations to think of something like eBay or Craigslist? And almost everybody resonates with those examples, and they say, yeah, doesn't that happen in the modern day organization? And then we point to counterexamples like Nokia, which started off as a paper company. Now, of course, it's a high-tech company. And so one of the keys to long-term growth and longevity for an organization is the ability to transform its character in those ways.
Bob, what type of insight do you have on this issue?
Yeah, it happens in organizations all the time. Generally, organizations start with some new idea, and then they start to refine it and make it better and produce business out of it. And in our book, we call this spot of getting to kind of a common understanding on a particular issue, a platform. And organizations operate within a platform because it's comfortable, it's generating good results, and it's generally less risky to stay in that one place. The problem is that there's both a fear and a comfort emotion that works in favor of staying where you are and not moving to a new idea or a new part of a new idea, and that generally causes organizations to start to decline because the old idea, the old platform, will get updated or outdated or competed against by someone, and it'll no longer be as relevant as it once was.
Yeah, my favorite example of that is when you think about the space program that put a man on the moon. The Mercury there were three major programs. There was the Mercury, the Gemini, and the Apollo. And the greatest Mercury capsule, which could only carry one astronaut, was never going to put somebody on the moon. It was when we went to the Gemini, we got two astronauts. That helped, but then we had to jump to a third platform with the Apollo. And if you start thinking of your organization in that way, I think you end up thinking about what platforms do we need to jump, where are we on the current platforms, and that allows us to begin to think about progress in a much more dynamic and profound way than we typically do.
Okay, you've convinced me. So what can we do about it?
So it takes courage. It takes organizational and personal courage. It takes an environment where taking risks is okay. There may be occasional mistakes. Not all things can be mistakes, but you need to have an environment where it's okay to experiment, it's encouraged to experiment, and people can work together to generate new ideas for new ways of doing things, and then the organization needs to be okay with trying those things and creating experiments around them.
Anything you'd like to add, Phil?
Well, I think to me I think it requires leaders collectively with everybody to get a sense of when the platform they're on currently needs to change because the environment is changing or the competitive environment is changing or things are changing in a profound way. In higher education, for example, online type of schooling and education is really changing higher education. And we need to embrace that and figure out a way to make it work in conjunction with our traditional educational platforms. That said, I also think it requires that leaders lead in different ways depending upon whether they're taking an existing platform and driving for it to be better, faster, and cheaper. Where you move to a new platform, you're bound to make mistakes. And so I think one of the great things that leaders can do in these environments is to say the rules of the game change depending upon where we are in the platform. And I think one of the greatest educational steps that any leader can make in any organization is to help define the rules of the game as they move from as where they are in kind of the evolution of the platforms that they're on, where they are with the current services, where they are with the current products, and where we need to deliver on those.
And you need to, as a leader, create an environment where people are comfortable producing, generating ideas and options to look at and consider all of these options. And oftentimes you find that blending different options and ideas together come up with this super idea that's more successful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, thank you both for moving us beyond the have you ever question to how can we make progress on this particular issue.